Hey everyone, it's Scott from Heroic Studios Gaming coming at you with another video today. Today I'm talking about When Rivers Were Trails, which Rivers Were Trails is an educational two-dimensional adventure game that is made in collaboration with the Indian Land Tenure Foundation and Michigan State University's Games for Entertainment Learning Labs project. It's made by, this is Kalapuyan Land, is the name of the group, and a bunch of sort of indie game designers and artists went into it. And essentially the way that this game is made is it's sort of a take, like similar to the Oregon Trail style. You start off and you choose like what type of character you are, and then you're going on this sort of journey. Now the journey is kind of forced because this story sort of tells the stories of the native peoples who were sort of displaced from their lands in the 1800s, specifically the Kalapuyan and the Anishinaabe peoples. Particularly the Anishinaabe. This is the Anishinaabe. Sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Anishinaabe people, as it follows the main character, your character, who's an Anishinaabe person who is being displaced from their lands due to the U.S. government forced movement. Or at least the government's forced movement, because you're leaving the land of Fond du Lac, which is actually, interestingly, the same land that the Acadian people were from, which is the people that eventually became the Cajun people. They also were pushed out of the Fond du Lac region, based on the same kind of thing that they were, like the government wanted to settle. So it's in Canada, but also moves very much into the Dakota lands, and North and South Dakota. So it's like U.S. government, Canadian government, like the government overall. But it's sort of, like I said, it's like Oregon Trail. You essentially can move in different directions, and you create kind of your own story as you go. I mean, there's obviously a predetermined path, but unlike Oregon Trail, it's not like a singular path. There's a few junctions where you can do different things. But the choices you make sort of it will determine how much of your medicines or tobacco that you use, how much of your food you eat, and then also like whether or not you can hunt or fish in certain places, or also your well-being. Like choices that you make that benefit other people affect your well-being, and choices that you make, and I made a few stupid ones like drinking water that didn't look so good. It actually warned me, and so the water doesn't look so good. I was like, I can handle it. Drank some water and I got cholera, right? I also ate with some white people at one point. I ate with some white settlers, and I got dysentery. So, hey, guess that's also not good. But eventually I died, just like in the Oregon Trail. I died and I was buried on the Oregon Trail. But essentially you make these choices, and it's kind of hard to see right now, but essentially you make these choices. Let me see if I can make this bigger walleye talk. Bam. Let's go over here. So you get to make these choices, and as you make choices, I'm actually just going to go full screen. As you make some choices, you can actually learn stuff as you go. You see in the corner there's something I can click to learn more. The point of the game is to be educational, so it leads to lots of research and lots of information that was written by native peoples. Here's one of the hunting examples, so I'll slow this back. I'll just drop that back up so you can see my face. But here's how hunting works, and it's very similar to Oregon Trail in its gameplay when it comes to things like hunting, because you basically just shoot your bow and you try to take out the things, and depending on what you take out determines whether you get meat. But in this little conversation here, first off, it drops a bunch of words from the Ojibwe language. And like you sort of learn the greeting and response in that language, and you also, a couple of times throughout, there's various language moments where it teaches you a thing, and at some point you end up in the Sioux Nation, and they use slightly different words, but you get what they're saying. But yeah, so there's this thing, and then it also says that that they want you to hunt in the traditional way, i.e. bow and arrow, instead of rifle. And there's also this thing about your tobacco. If you have leaves, you can use them, and they make your weapons, your arrows more effective. But deer take 2 shots. I learned, not after this hunting experience, but on like the 3rd time when I didn't take down, I hit them once and they didn't go down. I couldn't figure it out. Then I was like, oh wait, maybe I got to hit them twice. And then I hit them a second time, and boom, got the deer. That was something I didn't realize. They didn't tell me that. That should have told me that, but they didn't. But anyway, so as you go, you'll lose food. And as you you encounter, you can trade. You can trade medicines for food, food for medicines. You can give food or medicines to people to gain well-being. And well-being is essentially your life. Obviously, if you run out of food, you start losing well-being instead of food. But you start off okay, and then you encounter all kinds of stuff. Some of the things you encounter along the way are native Indian agents. Those are people who were set by the government to be sort of police. Well, they were not police. Like, okay, so what I learned from the game is the Indian agents were sort of initially people that sort of worked for the government and ratted out other natives, which kind of sucked. And then later, there's more Indian agents that are like more like police and sheriffs. And then like there's this whole thing about Wild Bill's traveling show, which is pretty cool. That sort of comes up quite a bit. But yeah, so there's this thing about Indian agents. This is a person who is living a white settler's life, who is native in nature. So he dresses like a white person, but is actually a native person. So he helps out. There's a couple of times where this sort of happens. There's another person who's dressed a little differently, who happens to be native heritage, but he's dressed more like a white person. But the game goes on and like teaches you all kinds of stuff about the Michigan region, the Dakotas, the Sioux people, and eventually you could potentially get to Oregon at some point. But in the process, you encounter various things. You have to row your canoe through some river times, which is very much like a Frogger game where you have to try to dodge stuff along the way. There's also hunting, like I said. There's fishing. There's interactions with the people, and you have to make decisions. I ended up fighting with the resistance, which later, when I was passing through Sioux Nation and there was all these like ghost dance things coming up, like I kept getting invited to ghost dance because of my involvement in the resistance. So these choices did actually affect some of what happened, and I danced a couple of times. It was okay. You don't actually dance, you just sort of say that you did the ceremony, and there's like, a result of it. It's pretty intense as far as it explains it, but the intenseness for the interaction of the clickiness of the game is the fishing and the hunting. But I was like really impressed to learn as much as I did. And like the stuff that I learned, I was kind of surprised. I had to like stop and look things up, not words, but like events that it told me about. I did not realize some of the events, so I learned quite a bit from this game, which was the point of the game. Right, that was the point of the game, is that I would walk away from this game thinking I had learned something, and so here I was going like, "Hey, I've learned something. Not only have I point and clicked for a few hours, but I've learned something about the plight of the natives in the 1800s." So I mean, thumbs up to the creators of this game, both or the writers and the artists, and all of the independent writers that also added, because each of the like sections where you can learn more, those are all written by people, and it gives you the name of the person who wrote it. So thumbs up to them. So I give this game a pretty good thumbs up value. I'll give it 2, mostly because it looks fine and it plays out very similarly to Oregon Trail, but you learn a whole bunch about native peoples. And for kids, this is a great game. For a kid who doesn't know anything, this is wonderful. And some of the things that like I thought I knew, and then like there was a slightly different version, I had to look up and find out like what I had been taught in school, or what I thought I had been taught in school, was definitely not what actually went down. And so that was a eye-opening sort of experience. So I'll give it 2 thumbs up, and I suggest that you should probably go try it. Just take a day and play. It's really easy. The only downside to it is that it doesn't come on Android. There's no Android version of it. There's only a PC and a Mac version, so you'll have to play it on your computer. But other than that, because there's no mobile version, but other than that, it works. It's great. Kind of fun. So yeah, go play it, go try it, and go learn some things about the natives in the 1800s. So that's all I have to say. So there we are. There's my review of it. That gameplay, by the way, just disclaimer, was not me. I tried to record my gameplay. For whatever reason, the gameplay was all janky all over the place. But because it's a very straightforward game, a lot of the gameplay that I had looked exactly like that. So I could have said it was my gameplay and you never would have known, but it wasn't. I just want to be clear that was from the internet, because of the gameplay that I kept trying to record. It kept being janky and it kept jumping, and I didn't think that was a good representation of how flowy the game was, and the music, because the music was all janky too. So there you go. So have a good day, and I hope that you enjoy your future games.